don't know who that strange woman is. We had some spirited debates there at our conference. Not many people have seen Dr. Isaacs dance before. He's a whole different person. That's a good one. Anyway. Well, thank you all for coming. I think I'm going to get started with some preliminaries. Our people are here, I think. If you want to move up to the front, you're welcome to, or if you're comfortable back there, that's fine. I'm going to introduce our speakers. Let me just say a couple things first. For those of you who are not aware of this, Dr. Isaacs has been at Georgia Southwestern since 1965. He has 47 years of service here. He supposedly retired back in 2005, but he's been teaching every semester for us since, and we've got him scheduled for next fall now, too, to teach a course. And I figure he'll be teaching on his 50th anniversary here, too. He founded the Association of Third World Studies back in 1983. He served as the executive director and treasurer for many, many years. Fortunately, we have a very, very able and excellent director, executive director, who is here with us tonight, Dr. Bill Peterson from Louisiana State University. Bill, and his discipline is political science, the queen of disciplines. ATWS has grown into the largest professional organization of its kind in the world. We have chapters in South Asia and in Africa. There have been 30 annual conferences, and I have a few of them pictured here. 58 issues of the Journal of Third World Studies, and Dr. Isaacs has been the editor-in-chief all those years for every single issue of the journal, and it's an excellent journal. I want to mention that I'm soliciting letters to Dr. Isaacs. I'm putting them in a binder that's not completed yet. And so if anybody wants to write a letter to Dr. Isaacs with a personal message, I will get those bound and into a binder for him, and I'll present that to him at some future date when it seems to be complete. We have a number of really special people here to talk about Dr. Isaacs' career, his contributions, and so I'm going to end my comments here. But we have people from out of state, including our main speaker, Dr. Abdul Karim Bangura from Howard University in D.C. But first of all, let me call our president, Kendall Blanchard. Dr. Blanchard, been president here since 2007, and I'll ask him to make a few remarks.
Dr. Klein, thank you for this opportunity. It's easy to say nice things about somebody like Dr. Harold Isaacs, somebody that I both like and admire. When you first told me about this event, though, I wasn't sure what it was supposed to be. Was it a roast? Was it a boast? Or was it a toast? But I decided to throw in a little of each. Unfortunately, I went online yesterday to look for some jokes about historians, and I couldn't find any. In fact, all I found was a short blurb on this History News network by somebody who was complaining that there were no jokes about historians, you know, jokes about economists, psychologists, deans, presidents, but not historians. And I guess I didn't realize that historians were so serious, but I understand. You know, I think about it. If historians were funny, their historical research might be called hysterical research. Anyhow, I decided it was time we have some jokes about historians, so in Dr. Isaac's honor, I came up with the following. And remember, folks, I don't get paid for writing jokes, so don't complain to the chancellor if you don't like them. What did the history professor say to his failing students? Those who flunk history are bound to repeat it. You notice, they don't know sign up.
I like this.
Did you hear about the historian who was kicked out of the singles club? He kept getting his dates mixed up. Why are old historians better teachers than young historians? Because they've actually experienced more of their subject matter firsthand. What do you call it when the history requirement is removed from the core curriculum? Hysterectomy. Did you hear about the historian who went to a funeral by mistake? He had heard they were going to celebrate the past, P-A-S-S-E-D. Or did you hear about the historian who misspelled history? He had to rewrite it. I can tell. I better stick to my day job. Again, folks, so much for the roast. Now the boast. Obviously, Dr. Klein has already said some of the things I was going to say, reminding people that Dr. Isaacs has been here since 1965. I had 48 years, you said 47. I have students ask me, you know, it was now, was the Dead Sea dead at that time? During that time, seriously, Dr. Isaacs has taught hundreds of students, countless contributions to his discipline, to his students, to the program, and certainly to the university. During my tenure here, I've been most impressed, of course, with his work managing and editing the Journal of Third World Studies. This is probably the most academically respectable publication that comes off this campus, and obviously says a lot about our reputation in the academic world, basically telling people that Georgia Southwestern is a highly credible institution where serious scholarship is the norm, not the exception. Also, the many seminars, the Third World Studies seminars that Dr. Isaac has hosted over the years have added a lot, I think, to the academic vitality of campus life here, and I'm grateful to him certainly for that. So, again, thank you, Harold, for all you've done for your students, your program, your discipline, and certainly the university. So, finally, in closing, a toast, and if you weren't so cheap, we would have some champagne here, but to Dr. Isaacs. May the record that you have amassed the limits of time far outlast. May your legacy live and continue to give. May your future be filled with the past. Dr. Isaacs.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. Our next speaker will be our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Brian Adler. He's been here with us since 2008.
Well, thank you, Gary. This is a wonderful evening to be celebrating Dr. Isaacs, and I'm very glad to be a part of it, and I want to welcome all of our guests, and thank you, Gary, for coordinating this and doing all the legwork. So it's hard to eclipse what has been said and what will be said, I'm sure, about Dr. Isaacs as the evening progresses. However, I will just mention really two facts, since the other things are very well known about him. I was interested to see, for example, that Dr. Isaacs wrote his master's thesis on the cocaine trade. you know, you wonder, somebody who's interested in cocaine at that age, how they're going to turn out. But fortunately, Dr. Isaacs continued on in a very serious vein. And so many years later, another, I think, noteworthy fact is that in 2004, Dr. Isaacs was inducted into the Board of Regents Faculty Hall of Fame. And I think that's a huge testimony to the seriousness and the gravitas, if you will, of Dr. Isaacs' work and his presence. And I have to say, since I've been here in 2008, the presence of Dr. Isaacs has been really tremendous and so noteworthy. If I had to think of several adjectives to describe Dr. Isaacs, I would think of courtly, generous, and knowledgeable. And I use those adjectives mainly because of my own personal experience with Dr. Isaacs. Every year, at least every year, when I would receive a volume of the Third World Studies Association, there'd always be a handwritten note in the volume from Dr. Isaacs addressing me by name and offering me this wonderful work of scholarship. And if that's not courtly and generous, I don't know what is. Going to the various Third World seminars that have been on this campus, and there have been numerous ones, and I think we've all been great beneficiaries of those wonderful seminars. Dr. Isaacs has always made a point of pointing me out when I do come and introducing me to the group. And I think these are in a sense old world manners and customs that we don't have much of any longer. And so Dr. Isaacs, I applaud you for maintaining those high standards. And I'll just conclude by paraphrasing Douglas MacArthur. When he was addressing Congress, I think in, 1954 or so? So my paraphrase is this: old scholars never die, and they don't even fade away. They just continue to teach on and edit volumes. So, Dr. Isaacs, thank you very much for your great service to the profession.
Thank you, Dr. Adler. Well, I guess you would say our keynote speaker is Dr. Abdul Karim Bangura, who comes from Howard University, where he is professor of research methodology and political science. He holds PhDs in political science, development economics, linguistics, computer science, and mathematics. And he speaks more than a dozen languages. He's got all kinds of awards over the years. He's been a stalwart of the ATWS, former president of the association, and he's come all the way from DC. We want to welcome him. You want a PowerPoint, don't you? Okay. Let's plug it in there. All right. Pull down this one. There you go. Let's see.
Start.
Yeah.
Let's go to computer. Yeah, it's already coming. It's already ready to open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll be Harold Isaacs. Harold Isaacs, keep going down.
Down some.
Harold Isaacs. Where's Harold Isaacs? Huh. Where is it? No. Go down, let's see.
Down further.
Yeah, let's see. Should have his name on it. Let's see. Get it up. Let's see. Get it up.
Ah, here.
Yeah,
No.
No, that's the essay. again.
Under Harold Isaacs?
Yeah,
You saw it?
Here we go, here we go.
Ah, okay. All right.
Slideshow. Okay. Good evening. Well, you've heard all the great stuff, the human stuff, the work stuff. But what we never really did was to examine Harold Isaac, the scholar, the thinker. And I thought there was this gap that needed to be filled. It was a bit serendipitous that I stumbled on his doctoral dissertation. I was doing something completely different. And I keyed the word Mexico, history and all that, and bam, his dissertation came up. And a lot of other works came up. But as I started looking at these works, I found all of them pretty much saying the same thing. And you hear them soon. Harold Isaacs was the only one that said something different. So I knew right away this quiet guy was a radical that he didn't even realize. So I had to put his work into one of the most excruciating tests using pluridisciplinary methodology, thereby forcing me to look at his work from many different disciplines so that I can understand what was really happening in Mwalimu Isaac's head when he wrote this dissertation. And the findings were pleasantly surprising. And you've heard all of these good things. We all love him. With all kinds of awards. Younger scholars want photo ops all over the world. They just want to be with him. But that is the man. And of course, you already heard speaker after speaker talk about his programs on campus, his founding of the ATWS, and many other things. So I'm going to skip all that. So what I did was to write a paper when I was done and submit it to the Journal of Third World Study, because it made sense that if we are going to write about the scholarship, let it come out into the journal that he edits. And just like the rascal that he is, he did send my paper out for referee. And I got some suggestions. I fixed whatever they suggested. I sent it back to him and said, now we can publish it. But I understand where he was coming from. He's the true scholar. You have to maintain not only the friendship and the respect for your scholars, but also you have to respect the integrity of the process. So he is indeed a special person. And pluridisciplinary methodology, which is that you use different disciplines to examine something, not in isolation. When looking at the strands of that methodology can allow you to go to the deep structure of what it is that you're studying, and in turn, the findings then inform the other methodologies. It was birthed by the great Senegalese thinker Cheikh Anta Diop, who was in his own self the founder of pluridisciplinary methodology. But like Africa, all Africa says are thinking, you don't have to be Black or African to think in an Africanist way. So we know that Jean Vercoutier also did contribute a whole lot to the development of the discipline. And we also know that Alain Anselin, who is what? A biracial Caribbean son, also contributed to the methodology. And of course, the African-American Clyde Ahmed Winters contributed a great deal to the development of the methodology. So you begin to see a multicultural, multidisciplinary approach that allows us to transcend our special disciplines to examine a phenomenon. The details, hopefully, you see in the journal article, since time will not permit me to go through each one of them. There are 6 major questions pluridisciplinary methodology asks. There are major concepts of pluridisciplinary methodology. And the favored approach, of course, is hermeneutics. Of course, Hermes is the Egyptian/Greek god of knowledge that brought message from the gods to humans. So therefore, there's a special place for a pluridisciplinarians that goes back to the BCs. And of course, then I use linguistic presuppositions. Why do we say one thing when we mean something else completely different? Politicians are very good at this. Did my opponent cheat on his wife again? Presupposition is what? That his opponent had cheated on his wife before. And his gives us the clue that he must be a guy. So this is not a new phenomenon, just that we don't usually look at it very carefully. And there are scientific tools in determining linguistic presuppositions. So what's the focus? The focus is the writer's topics. It's the writer that has topics, not the text. So when you use linguistic presuppositions, you are really reframing this writer, even when they are there 200 years ago, to say what was really going through their heads. If they say this, what does it presuppose? That means you also have to know the context in which the text was written at that time. So that means I had to do a lot of research of the era that Dr. Isaac did his doctoral dissertation, so that I can contextualize what he was doing at that particular point in time. And then I have to also make sure that the coding unit is reliable. So I had to call the king of discourse analysis, the great Dr. Shai, to say, Prof. Shai, am I on the right track on this thing? So he had to confirm. And then I asked other two linguists to see whether or not, if my interpretation of what I'm reading is kosher. Without their blessing, I would not have proceeded. But there are other theoretical and structural rules we must obey. Constancy under negation. The negation of the concept does not change its meaning. But that was not enough. We also have other rules, presuppositional divisibility rules. Because again, there's one thing to write something, there's one thing to interpret what the context and the concepts are, but it's also a completely different thing that people can deceive when they do write. And of course, we know politicians and our good friends in Washington, those of us who come from Washington, are very good at it. And then there's the projection problem, which we also had to address, and text deconstruction, the meaning and so on and so on. And then we say, how then do we test all of these texts? Now that we know what the topics are, we know what we can divvy this up, how do we test? So then mathematics come into play. Now, how do we use all this textual stuff and say, put it in a computer, run some mathematical equations to see what makes sense? Bam. Fractal mathematics becomes very important. And fractal methodology, of course, is a very slippery term. We still have not have one concrete term. But we know that for us to even define a fractal, we have to go back to the origin of what fractals are. And where did they begin? And then why did Mandelbrot come up with this idea of fractal? So we know that they are self-repeating patterns as the most basic definition. So then I have to look at Mwalimu Isaac's text to see self-repeating patterns in his writing to say, aha, this is isolable. Then we are now able to do some fractal analysis. And there are now very good works on that. Matter of fact, the journal that just came up that is edited by the great Ron Eglash, where I contributed a paper, has now advanced how you use textual work to analyze many of these phenomena mathematically. So we have to look at self-similarity, scale invariance, and of course, the analysis of fractals rests on power law. That is, unlike the regular things we do in statistics, we're not just happy with just giving us correlation coefficient, regression coefficient. We want to make sure whatever I'm explaining has a particular power that is much more stronger than the regular coefficients. So there is a much more stringent requirement for that. Moving quickly, what then do? I then have to say, given these topics that Professor Isaacs has looked at, how can I delineate them in terms of order or disorder? Well, we know what definitions of order is. I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room. And we also know what the basic definition of disorder is. So then we can now read his text, now caught up in this loop, is chapter by chapter by chapter. We could have gone page by page by page, depending the amount of text. And then we can also then say this belongs to the disorder, this belongs to the other category. And this is what was amazing. First, I just do descriptive statistics just to see what the patterns of the data is, run some inferential statistics, and then run the real fractal, that's the log-log plus graph, and then binary logistic statistic. And this is what came up. You begin to see that in diplomatic relations, you have more disorder. And then, in diplomatic, you have more order. Mexican-Guatemalan boundary, you have more order. And then it changes in the obstacle of effective border control. Now I begin to wonder, in 2011, 2012, 2013, why the border control is still a problem. So here is somebody who had seen a pattern, a trend, in something that no other researcher was able to grapple with that is here today. And then in all the other things where we used to beat up on the Mexicans, beat up on other folks, we are completely opposite because he was not subscribing to the currency, the views that were held by most folks in academia at the time, and you see them soon. Then I ran the t-test peer squaring correlation, almost statistically significant at 0.05 level, close but no cigar. So that tells us that Mwalimu Isaac was not just being a fan of the Mexican, being pro-United States of America. That indeed, he was a very balanced analyst in looking at the relationships between these countries. And then, here is our power law statistic, the log-log plot. You see it began with order, comes down, begin to go down to disorder, comes back to order, begins to go back to order, declines, comes back, and goes up. So in essence, we could not have characterized the relationship as what many of the writers at the time were saying. There was something missing. And of course, who were these writers? And these are the people that got all the accolades, that got all the TV, the radio, the newspaper write-ups. An example, Alan Knight. The theory of the peaceful conquest. It is America's right, it's Americans' imperative to go and really conquer Mexico because they need to be conquered, they need to be civilized, they need to be brought to our standards. Do we hear that even today? That is what sells. Another perspective, the Oriental perspective. They are different from us. Mary Barton. And of course, like every scholarship, there are always going to be racists. Sleepy peons and side-eye burros. Example is, I forgot his name, I forgot to write it, but it's in the paper. But this is the same strands we see how we analyze other societies in the world. So then there was something interesting about why Mwalimu Isaacs fell in love with the third world and was so close to Africans. The finding was not surprising to those of us who have worked for him for many years, but it was surprising that in his doctoral dissertation, that was evident in what we call in hieroglyphics, ancient Egyptian language, Atenu or Mapindizi in Kiswahili, or the revolutionary perspective. Its emphasis was on justice. And what is Ron Eglash's dictum? Very simple. The African thought process does not have this binary division of good versus evil. For in good lies grain of evil, and even some evil act lies the grain of goodness. So what did Bangura and Auno say? The African life concept is holistic. You cannot separate the religion from the spiritual, from the actions, from the other politics, economics, and all of those things. They have to be looked at in one whole circumference. So therefore, if I can borrow from Mwalimu Isaac Verbum, which he likes to tell all of us, he is a superlative African. And in conclusion, if you were a visitor, if we can take him where I was born and raised in Upper Bambara, we would have done for him the Goboy dance, because he's a real hero. Where is my audio sound? Okay. I wish you could hear the music, but there's no music. Now Gary's in big trouble, okay? That's okay. Now, we know somebody who was born there is having too much fun back there. That's the cuckoo bear, right? Ali Maguyo, Yamali Makuku Buff. You see? Yamali Makuku Buff. Okay? All right. And as I always say in my email and in every writing, as the ancient Egyptian taught us, and Mwalimu has taught us in this association, Ham, Hitep, Huru, we must always live, and whatever we do, in peace, always. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bangura. Next, we have some words from Professor Ajay Robinson, who is originally from Sierra Leone. He earned a doctorate in education at Columbia University, served as Dean of the Faculty of Education of the largest African universities south of the Sahara, and was also in the College of Education at Delaware State University. He's published a number of children's storybooks and a book on teachers' principles and practice. And he's recently completed a book of poetry, and I think we're going to get a sampling of that here. So Dr. Robinson, he's been a member of ATWS for many years. Happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues. Under the tutelage of Isaac, I will say, brothers and sisters. I think it was the president who mentioned the little notes that used to come with the journal. Up to the one I received last week, there was a little personal note. Many times I asked myself, how many of us would take that trouble to send that personal note when something that we published or a journal is coming out? I don't think we are many. I don't know when I joined the ATWS, but I think I'm a very long-standing member. And Isaac has always been, up to the last annual meeting that we had, I know that he made effort to attend almost all the sessions that were held, even if he didn't spend a long time in each session. But that personal touch, putting himself there, was there. It was in that light, therefore, that I used a little talent that God gave me. Well, I didn't know how to pay tribute to him. First, I felt, well, write a short paragraph or two, but you think, how prose, this man is above prose. Then I said, okay, let me use that talent that I'm endowed with, write short verses for him. I decided on that. It was difficult to choose the poetic form that would suit Harold. First thought about the sonnet, no. The elegy, no. The ode, no. Thought about the quatrain, but the quatrain, you have to have the iambic pentameter and the lines have to have certain numbers. So I came up with my own form of poetry for somebody very special. I looked up the meaning of the name Harold. To us Africans, names are very, very important. And I discovered that Harold was reflecting his name, a leader. Not just a leader, but the leader of an army. It's an old Anglo-Saxon word. I can't pronounce the cognate. It's something like Wiggleweld or something like that. But then when you come to the word Isaac, it's not just one Isaac, the father of many nations, but Isaac's the father of so many nations. And it was with that I came up with this short poem, The Many Isaacs in King Harold. There was once a great and mighty king who learnt well the first world songs to sing. But his energies and thoughts would seem to bring the first world studies and end with a double sling. The empire his ancestral armies would create with the blood and wealth of each third world state. As the subjects grew thin and filled with hate, they fought to stand independent of their fate. Harold, the founder, leader of Third World Studies fame, took his team under his collegial wings in his army's name as he moved Third World scholars from their bane and raised them to the highest scholarly plane. Harold, the amalgam of leadership and procreation, became not one, but many Isaacs in a generation, to lead that scholarly family in procreation and deliberation, as he nurtured his third world children's aspiration. Like his great and great-great super-grandfather, with no bullets, Harold built an invincible alma mater to nurture and consolidate learning for the better, with his indomitable love and expansion of the matter. The great-grandson of Father Abraham, Harold became the indisputable father with grand slam. With his little warm notes on the journal in arm, Harold has built the third world's eruditish barn. Professor Harold Isaacs, our strong, able, and amiable family head, your ATWS children wish for you a bed of roses, good fortune, and long life as you tread the fruitful acres of our third world homestead. Presented by me, the ATWS has a plaque for you with these humble words, and we will appreciate
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Our next speaker is Dr. Seata Coleman, who works for the federal government now. I think it's the Treasury Department, is that right? She was a professor at Clark Atlanta University previously, originally from Liberia, and also a longtime member of ATWS. We're pleased to have you here, Dr. Coleman.
Good evening. I just have a few words to say and give thanks to Dr. Isaac for the contributions he has made to academic scholarship, especially among young graduate students. I first learned about the ATWS while an associate professor of economics at Clark Atlanta University. And over the years, it's really meant much to me. My own presentations at the several meetings we've held, and also in complimentary in books that some of his members have published. I've added some contributions. But Dr. Isaac, I think of all the things that you've done, the one that has impressed me and the cause for which I feel compelled to have come here this evening is the contribution you've made to young graduate students for their publications, their publications. So many of them have gone on and become publishers and associate professors and full professors. So I'm here tonight to give you this plaque on behalf of them.
Thanks, Dr. Coleman. Our next speaker is Dr. Bill Head, who is the chief historian at Warner Robins Air Force Base. He's written more books than I have fingers and toes, so I've lost count. And he is one of the founding members of the ATWS. Without his help and assistance, I'm pretty sure Dr. Isaacs would have had a much harder time getting it off the ground. But Dr. Head has been a mainstay of ATWS since 1983, and we're pleased to have you here.
Well, since I got that introduction, I'll do it this way. Harold, we used to do that show where, you know, this is your life. Most of you guys are too young to remember that. But when I first came to Robins Air Force Base, I was determined to keep my hand in the academic side of history. So I was looking through the Chronicle of Higher Education, and I saw this little ad. It said that they're having a conference at Georgia Southwestern. I had no idea where that was. I figured a Southwest. And underneath it said if you wanted to send a paper or something in, you could send it to Dr. Harold Isaacs. Well, having been a sinologist, I knew Harold R. Isaacs, the famous Chinese historian and scholar. And so I sent the paper in to be on one of the panels, and I got a wonderful response that I was going to be on the panel. And then a few days later, I got a phone call. And it was from Dr. Isaacs, which I was really thrilled to get a phone call. And he said, well, I'm not the famous Chinese historian. Instead, I'm the famous Latin American historian who teaches at Georgia Southwestern. So I came to the panel. We had a wonderful experience. And sometime after that, I joined ATWS. And then Harold and I spent a conference. I can't even remember, Harold, I don't remember. I think it was Georgia Association of Historians. It was at Jekyll Island. And we spent, you know how academics are, we have to save money. So we roomed together, we drove over and back together. And the whole time, Harold kept talking about his vision of what the association was going to be like. And by the time we got home, we decided that we were going to create an incorporation out of the ATWS. And so it became Harold's job to take care of the finances and the incorporation, and it was going to be my job to write the Constitution and the bylaws. And we did. And as they say, the rest is history. Because soon after that, we had a conference in Georgia, away from Georgia Southwestern, and we had meetings in the Southeast, Florida, places like that. And then we ventured out into the West and the Northeast of the country. And then, oh my God, we went overseas. And we have grown and grown. And in fact, I was telling Harold we played golf Sunday, and I told him of an interesting email I received from a friend who's former 3-star general in the Air Force, who'd happened to stumble across these Journal of Third World Studies. And his comment was, what a balanced and exciting piece of scholarship you all did. And I had no idea that somebody in the Air Force read our stuff, but they do, everybody all over the world. So I don't want to get too sentimental because my job is to perk this thing up a little bit. I brought some gifts, you know, and you always should be aware of historians bearing gifts. But this is not these neat trophies and everything. This is stuff that is practical. So you have to come up here, okay? I have two things. First of all, I'll speak louder. First of all, most of you probably know that Harold Isaacs graduated, undergraduate, right, from the University of Alabama when Bear was still there. And he's too modest to gloat over the fact that Alabama Crimson Tide have won 3 out of the last 4 national championships. But here, there's a hat for you to wear next time we go out. And after our experience on Sunday, I figure he needs some more golf balls. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Head. Now we have a graduate student, a PhD candidate from Howard University in DC, political science again. His concentration is international relations and public administration. I'm going to read some of this because I haven't had the good fortune yet to meet Fala Llama. I hope I said that correctly. But we welcome him here. He wanted to say some words. He hopes to work for the U.S. federal government or the United Nations. He's married, has 2 sons and a daughter. He likes reading, writing short stories, playing tennis, and he lives in Virginia. And we're happy to have him here. Mr. Llama.
Good evening, everyone. Mine is going to be a very short one because with the big shoes that has been already created here, I can't fill it. But the only thing that I will say, I am here, I have seen, I'm learning, and I'm going to follow right along. In 2001 meeting, Dr. Harold Isaacs Award competition for graduate students was established. And since its inception, the competition has named it in his honor because it is fitting for the Association of Third World Studies to do this. Sometimes when I look at the work that the Association of Third World Studies is doing, I say, where in the world did this man get this idea? And as you can see now, the third world is becoming central in all the discussion, both at national and at international level. So for that, Dr. Harold Isaacs, I applaud you and I appreciate what you have done. We thank you, Dr. Harold, for such foresight. The main thrust of this graduate competition was that of supporting research, focusing on third world studies. And it's unfortunate that college is in session, but this hall would have been packed full because my colleagues have really wanted to come for this occasion. But they did say I have to come so that I have to represent them. Because I know most of my colleagues who have written papers, that was a motivation for them, and they have written some more, and written some more,
just as the last speaker had said, since he joined, now he has written so many books that he has lost count of them. And this is what this type of organization does. Once you are in it, you just keep on going for more, you keep on going for more. And that is your foresight, which we appreciate. I want to encourage all of you who are here this evening to relay this to your students, that it is important for them to join the organization and to contribute papers to this organization, because it is like opening a wide door for them in their future development, academic development, or in their future careers. So it is going to be a challenge from me as a graduate student to all of you who are here, who are professors, to make this known to them. The papers are now being called, and the closing date for the receipt of papers for our meeting this year will be September 30th. Maybe later on, if you talk with Dr. Harold Isaacs, or you give them the website, they'll be able to go in there and they'll be able to do something. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleagues and on personal behalf, we have this little present to make to Dr. Harold Isaacs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Harry, you're getting some exercise, huh? Finally, we have a representative of our community to say a few words about Dr. Isaacs. Dr. Isaacs has had an enormous impact on this community with his third world programs for these many years now. So we have with us Dr. George Bagley, prominent local dentist, native of Americus. And if Harry and I have nice smiles, we can thank this guy for it. Dr. Bagley.
When Dr. Klein was gracious enough to invite me tonight, I asked for a point of privilege, and that was just to say a few words. Dr. Isaac's peers have spoken very eloquently about his achievements, his accomplishments, his friendships, the collegiality that he's exhibited to his fellow academics. Tell a little different story. It's a story about two friends, men that were probably as disparate as men can be in their views of the world. Hidebound, red state conservative, and a yellow dog Democrat liberal. But what we learn from one another, and probably the greatest gift that Harold Isaacs has exhibited, is his ability to teach listening to other people, to carry on a civil discourse. Staff at my office, when they see Dr. Isaacs on the books, they add a half hour, because they know we're going to sit there and talk, that we're going to converse, that we're going to explore our relationship. Harold Isaacs did give me the greatest gift. And he's done that to 3 generations of my family. He taught me how to listen. Dr. Isaacs.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to honor Dr. Isaacs. This concludes our program. I didn't really prepare remarks, but I guess I'd like to end this by saying that I feel extremely fortunate to have ended up here in the same department with Dr. Isaacs. I've been lucky enough to work with him on a daily basis. His office is right next door to mine. He's not only an excellent teacher and scholar, but he is a tremendous human being. He is just, I can't tell you what a fine human being he is. I never hear any sour words from him about anybody. I don't know him to badmouth anyone. He's just one of the most decent people I've ever met in my life. And his career reflects that basic decency. And I want to thank you, Harry, for being such a great colleague and teacher and contributing so much to Georgia Southwestern. Thank you all for being here. Grab some food on your way out, food and drinks, because we got them over here. We don't want them to go to waste. Good night, everybody.